Thank you for having me. I am Manal Mohamed Eltayeb. I work in the field of mental health and trauma recovery. I help professionals and humanitarian aid workers who are dealing with distressed communities. My focus is helping them understand what impacts their work with people who are suffering entails, and also educating them about how they can create practical systems for emotional regulation, supervision, and also trauma-informed practices.
Could you give us a definition of what vicarious trauma is?
Basically, it's an internal shift that happens to people who are repeatedly exposed to trauma stories and emotional pain of others. It shifts how we feel, how we think, how we function, how we believe. And on the long term, it can change how we view the world. It shifts us from a balanced or an optimistic view to a more darker and pessimistic view.
So could you tell us what signs someone would have if they have vicarious trauma? And are there some red flags that you should look out for?
For the signs, people experience trauma throughout their body, their thoughts, their emotions, and their behaviors. You could see in someone who is suffering with vicarious trauma, restlessness, hopelessness. You can see negative emotions, feeling down all the time, withdrawal from activities. And for the physical part, they could be complaining about symptoms that cannot be explained or that does not have a medical underlying issue. And we can see also tight shoulders and clenched jaws. Also, it affects intimacy and relationships. People will tend to lack that closeness. They just prefer to be left alone and disengaged with other people and their normal activities. For the red flags, if you notice that someone has a sudden drop in their empathy, they just suddenly became indifferent, and if they recounted that they feel unsafe in ordinary situations, also if they have medical complaints but they cannot name it, I would recommend to meet a specialist and discuss this with them.
So what strategies can one use to reduce the risk of vicarious trauma?
I think it works on different levels. But if the person start with themselves, they can have boundaries in their work, because we know that working with trauma cases can have a taxing effect on our emotions and our time. So if you can find meaningful breaks, it will help you. If you get yourself into grounding practices and breathing practices, it really helps. And don't be afraid to reach out and ask support from your friends, your family, your supervisors. And I would encourage organizations to have emotional safe cultures, that is having policies that encourage their employees to discuss their emotional struggles and how being exposed to traumatic material affects them.
From your definition, you mentioned that this is an occupational challenge that arises because of the nature of the work that someone does. So is it inevitable that someone will develop vicarious trauma?
It's not inevitable, but it's predictable. The way how we empathize with others can affect us, but if we are mindful and we became very intentional about perspective taking when we are working with our clients, rather than absorbing and mirroring their emotional suffering, it will work. Also, if we have healthy emotional boundaries, and if we have a good supervisor we can communicate with, this will definitely help reduce the effect of vicarious trauma.
So we are working with a network of Sudanese NGOs and civil society organizations that are involved in documenting mass atrocities. What strategies can these CSOs adopt to protect the mental well-being of their staff?
Let me say that Sudanese community tend to channel their emotional struggles as physical symptoms. So if you notice a colleague or if you are a supervisor, notice that your team is struggling and there are a lot of absence and delayed deadlines and frequent complaints and sick leaves, it's a sign, and you need to train them in how to allow discussions about mental health in your work. Also, this kind of approach help release or relieve the pressure that people have about dealing with their own emotions in silence. It creates a sense of commonality and community in your team, as well as it make people feel accepted as they struggle and supported. Another thing I would encourage our Sudanese colleague is to have a solid network of referrals, knowing who to contact and when. Also, training in emotional regulation would really help.
Now, people who work in difficult environments tend to adopt either a rescuer mindset or a hero mindset. This happens sometimes. Is this, from your experience, is this something that is problematic?
It's a noble point of view to have, but on the long run, it's very detrimental on the mental health of the individual who is being imposed or bestowed this position of a hero. And it can actually have counterproductive effects on them, such as guilt. It may affect the way they see themselves, because their self-worth, because they tend to adopt the stories of the people who are helping, and rather than seeing themselves separate from them, they become one and develop a mindset of a victim likewise. So it's not very encouraged. And as I said, creating safe spaces for people to discuss their emotional struggle will ease and lift the responsibility that this perspective is imposing on them.
What approach should a documenter take when they're interviewing an individual who's traumatized? As you mentioned, oftentimes they want to put themselves in the shoes of the victim. But is there, beyond the boundaries that you mentioned and some of the other tools that they can employ, are there some other ways in which they can still carry out this interview, but at the same time protect themselves from the effects that would arise?
Definitely being mindful of their job description and their role, and being trauma informed. You will see the reaction of the person in front of you as something normal to the suffering that they have gone through. And this will release the tension that you have to do something, you have to tap on their shoulders, you have to cry with them. But once you have understand that this is a very normal reaction to a very difficult situation, a less pressure will be on you.
I've heard about the empathy versus the sympathy approach. Could you tell us a bit more about this and what this actually means in practice?
So being sympathetic, that means you are becoming one with the person who's telling their trauma story. In a sense that you are walking in their shoes, feeling their emotions, and there is no any separation between your own emotions and their emotions. And empathy is the more balanced way to approach it, is where you think of it as perspective taking, approaching the other individual with non-judgment attitude, and giving them the space to feel the emotions. So, for example, if you are sympathizing with somebody, they might feel pressured or might feel awkward if they cried and broke down because now the two of you are crying. Or maybe you just magnify what they are going through, that they will have the thought like, oh my God, this is a lot that I'm going through. Even the person in front of me couldn't bear hearing about it. But if you approach it with empathy, you allow them to feel the emotion and you be present for their support. That I understand it's your experience and it's difficult, and I'm here to support you, not to become one with you.
How does someone separate work from their private lives? Because quite often you find that they end up being intertwined. But how do you maintain this distinction?
It's a very mindful practice, and it needs a lot of time to gain this. But there are small rituals or routines that you can do throughout your day to help you separate the two hats. For example, if you are just leaving the office, you can note down whatever concerns that you are left with, not to carry them with you at home. And if you are really struggling with deadlines, you need to speak up about this and talk to your supervisor that you are overwhelmed, and find a way that you can schedule your deadlines. And also being very protective of your time. Being that means not being available 24/7. Being protective with your emotional state, not allowing being rushed. Allow to give yourself a space to go through the emotions. And also it has to do with cognitively separating yourself. That means you have a specific statement that you tell yourself that this is not my story, this is somebody else, and listening to your needs. This is what I need a break, I need longer time, it's too much for me, I cannot handle it. So these are 3 things to be mindful of, how the work is taxing on you, and accordingly you listen to your needs and you set the appropriate boundaries.
As a Sudanese psychologist or trauma professional, working with people who've gone through such difficult times, what gives you hope?
It's a lot. It's a difficult question, especially not just witnessing or listening to people's stories, but actually experiencing them yourself. What gives you hope is that the togetherness that you find in suffering, that the community that you create. People come to therapy with very dark perspective, that everything is gone, I shouldn't be living, but you work it together, and from that you get the satisfaction that I could actually help someone, but not in an ego boosting way, but in a very humane way, that I have actually helped somebody and I could see the changes.
Thank you so much, Manal, for the interview. We're really grateful for your time.
Thank you for having me.